To clear things up, I'd like to say that I am not a fan of soap operas. I merely became a fan of General Hospital because I was bored. So bored that I needed something new to occupy my interests, and it didn't really matter what it was. A pairing from the show occupied me from then on, and when I became disillusioned and stopped watching, the only thing I came out of the experience with was what a good soap opera was and what a bad soap opera was. Once upon a time, this was a good soap opera. Sometimes maybe even a great soap opera. But sadly, now this is a bad soap opera. A very bad soap opera. Aside from reality shows, General Hospital is the biggest, most horrific waste of an hour on TV. The show has fallen far from its glory days, and most of that fall took place during the year 2008. 2007 was the best year General Hospital had since Stone's death. The storylines were engaging and interwoven, and most importantly, they made sense. The Metro Court hostage crisis was the last big hurrah for that show. It involved all the characters on the canvas, and it was extremely well thought out. It moved the current storylines forward, and even the death of Alan, an adored patriarch of the show, drove the story forward in a very positive way for other characters. Some people would argue that the black and white ball was the last big hurrah. I have to disagree, because it moved a storyline forward that never should have been started in the first place, and it killed a beloved character whose death served no purpose in the story. When 2008 arrived, the fans were promised a year as good as, if not better than, 2007. They were promised reveals, exciting stories, and, most importantly, romance. The romance swiftly disappears, only to be replaced, yet again, by the mob. The mob storyline has been in place in General Hospital before the current pillars of the mob community even existed. Heck, Luke was introduced through a mob storyline. But in recent years, it has become a poison that has slowly choked the life out of the show. It has taken over the show to a point where the hospital is left with only a few minutes of the show, if that. In a show called General Hospital, it would be nice to see more hospital than the guns and explosions that they show us instead. Oh, and it would be really nice if the times when we do see the hospital, it's not just because of another mob-related shooting, or kidnapping, or explosion. So with 2008 having been the worst year of the show yet, fans were certain it could only get better. Until 2009 hit, and things somehow got even worse. There were so many dropped storylines, like Jason's hand surgery, Kate's heart problems, and Stan's mysterious death, so many destroyed pairings, and so little to enjoy about the show that, not surprisingly, ratings began to plummet. In the wreckage, gems of actors were left struggling to make the content work when it simply did not make sense in the context of their characters' histories, or in the history of the show as a whole. Rather than character-driven stories, the writers introduced purely plot-driven storylines, which forced the characters to behave in ways that loyal fans knew they never would. The writers tried to rewrite history as well, further destroying the show and beloved characters, and insulting the fan base in the process. All the characters suffered, and most became caricatures. Part of what made soaps great in the past were their strong, very individual characters. Even though almost all of them were prone to doing horrible or misguided things, they all had understandable reasons for doing those things. Each was driven by something different, and fans might love or hate them, but at least we got why they were doing what they did. And you could never describe a character using one word as you can today with characters like Spinelli, Sam, and Claudia. The family and the romance in the afternoon has been completely erased by General Hospital. There are no couples that stay together, and the once core families have been utterly decimated. The once thriving Webbers, Baldwins, and Hardys are down to one or two lingering holdouts. The Corinthos family is the only thriving group, and even that is stretched to the limit. They have become the main focus of the show, and they have absolutely nothing to do with the hospital. The Quartermain family, which was once one of the strongest families in the show, has become mere threads of what it once was. They killed off member after member of what used to be one of the most reliably entertaining families, until there are now only 4 present and known, one of whom doesn't even share the same name. There are 3 characters who could have been added to the family tree, but that opportunity was passed for the sake of the writer's preferences and who Jason Morgan should be paired with. Luke and Laura's children are nothing but dolts who have no place on the show as it is. An ex-drug addict and cop who has no errors, and a teenage girl with no direction or any clue about life. The beloved Luke and Laura pairing has been squandered not only by this brood of children, but by the writers as well. And this new storyline in which Luke supposedly cheated on Laura throughout their entire marriage, and maybe with her blessing? Give me a break! If the writers can't respect even the most iconic pairing in the history of daytime, there's really no hope for the medium. Part of the family presence on the show has also been washed away by the writers' refusals to write for characters older than 40. Once they hit that age, they are labeled as old and shoved to the back burner. These are key characters who have been on the show for years, and the fans want to see them. Newsflash, we miss people like Ellen and Tony. We even miss the ones they occasionally let us see for 30 seconds, like Monica and Bobby and Mike. One of the biggest downfalls of General Hospital has to be their array of weak women. All the women over 40 have miraculously disappeared, so their strong presence has also dissipated. Every now and then the writers introduce a new, potentially strong female character. Then over time, they turn these interesting people into weak, useless, and boring women that none of their audience can relate to. Characters like Kate Howard, who was brought in looking like a strong, independent woman, and then reduced to Sonny Corinthos' love slave. Or Sam McCall, who started out as a potentially street-smart survivor, is now presented as an example of a strong woman. Ooh, she can shoot a gun! But she repeatedly uses sex to get her way, and consistently gets herself into messes due to her own stupidity, and then has to be saved by a male character. Or even Elizabeth Weber, whose character used to be feisty and fun, has been so deteriorated that she can't even put up a fight anymore. The biggest and dumbest move of 2008 was tearing apart couples on the show who have huge fan bases. These fans bring in the ratings that keep the show afloat, and yet their couples were torn to bits for the sake of the drama. Couples like Carjacks, Jolu, Liaison, Lusam, Scrubs, Spinmax, and yes, even Skate. Character growth, family ties, promises of everlasting love, character compatibility, realistic portrayals, all of this was thrown out the window in order to tear apart pairings that people absolutely adored. This has driven the show's ratings down, and no matter how much the fans protest, the writers refuse to give them what they want. Instead, the writers have convinced themselves, despite all evidence to the contrary, most notably the rating trends in the past 2 years, that the fans will eventually come around to whatever the writers throw at them. That is what a bad soap opera is. A soap without characters, romance, family, and, in General Hospital's case, without even the hospital. We're left to be taunted with memories of what used to be by a pitiful, dried-up piece of garbage that can't even righteously call itself a soap opera.